Let's begin by meeting Mr. Vignarajah's supporters. We have former Chief Judge of Baltimore City, Wanda Hurd, longtime civil rights leader Marvin "Doc" Cheatham, former 5th District Council member Ricky Spector, former federal prosecutor Charlie Sheeler, and former Baltimore City Police officer and FOP leader Robert Cherry. One of Mr. Vignarajah's other supporters is joining us tonight. He's no stranger to those who've lived in Baltimore for a long time. Marvin "Doc" Cheatham joins us now, who is the former president of the Baltimore City NAACP and has been a longtime activist in the city. Mr. Cheatham, how are you? And thank you for joining us.
Glad to be alive and awake and honored to be on the show with you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that, sir. Mr. Cheatham, why are you supporting Thuroo Vignarajah?
Well, looking at the candidates, and there are so many of them, I'm a neighborhood president. We reached out to all of the candidates 5 times in writing, requesting first and foremost that they at least respond to our memorandum of understanding, a listing of 23 issues that directly affect our neighborhood. And first and foremost, we asked all of the candidates to at least respond whether they could be supportive or would not be supportive of our issues. I'm happy to say the first candidate that responded, the majority of the candidates have not, but very impressed with the responses that Mr. Vignarajah gave our community with reference to 23 issues. And the issues really relate to holding elected officials accountable. We did that with a city council person. We found out later that promises made were not kept. We think it's imperative, the neighborhood that I'm president of, one of the things that has hurt us is that we have not kept the candidates that get elected accountable. And we feel, one, the fact that this young guy has come forth, not only responded, but has responded and talked to us on each one of those individual issues.
He certainly has made a lot of promises, and we've had him at our town halls. One of the things he said is that you can evaluate him in his first 100 days, and there will be a number of things that he's done or hasn't done, and judge him on that. What do you believe specifically that he's going to do, especially where crime is concerned, that hasn't been done in the past, Mr. Cheatham?
Okay, speaking on the issue of crime, my neighborhood, Matthew Henson, we're probably more of the Freddie Gray neighborhood than any community in the city of Baltimore. 2 years ago, we experienced 19 homicides, an unbelievable number. We had the mayor then, shortly after the Freddie Gray riots, we had Catherine Pugh come and walk through our neighborhood so she could see firsthand the crime and violence that we were experiencing. We sought another means by which to address crime. We thought the idea that was being supported by this young guy named Thuroo Vignarajah, that he was on point, that we thought the issue dealing with an eye in the sky is another route that we could look at. We could not handle having another 19 homicides in 1 year in one community. So yes, we were very much interested in knowing that if it's broke, it needs to be fixed. And we feel that the crime issue, solving crime in Baltimore, is actually broke. And the overwhelming majority of the elected officials we have been putting in office for the last 25, 30 years has seriously failed us. I live in what's called the Wild Wild West, where we lead in homicides, crime, violence, year in and year out. So what we've been doing has failed us. I'm happy to say that I took on the city of Baltimore and a mayor. I was the lead plaintiff in a lawsuit against the city of Baltimore and the mayor. The mayor's name was Martin O'Malley, because they were arresting us. They were violating our rights. This issue, so far as cameras are concerned, we run across cameras every day. And we're saying if a camera is in the sky, it's not taking a picture of me. All it is doing is following my movement from wherever it is that they first saw me to wherever it is that I'm going. We were very supportive of this and happy to see that there's a candidate wanted to look outside the box to solve the problem of crime, because 30 years of leadership in Baltimore City has failed us.
You talked about the stop and frisk policy that was in place in the 90s. under O'Malley and also the
That is
Clinton
correct.
administration, and people have been very critical about that, looking back on that. But let's talk about this, though, because this is important. Support of the black community. I'm not asking you to speak for all black folks in the city of Baltimore, and people are varied. They're not monolithic. We recognize that. But it is important, if one wants to get elected, to make sure they have support of African Americans in the city. How do you think Mr. Vignoraja will break through to get that support? And do you think he has that right now, in your opinion?
I would say sincerity. What I'm hearing, and I've had maybe 6 or 7 close encounters, if you will, with this candidate. And it is clear that not only is he trying to understand the problems and the challenges that we have, but has taken the time and energy to come up with ideas to address the problems and concerns that we have. That's what impresses me about him. As a community president, I'm a 501c3. I have not come out officially to support anyone, but I'm saying very candidly, the other candidates need to watch what this young guy, Mr. Vignoraja, is doing, how he's addressing the issues, how he's doing his homework, and then how he's coming to the communities to address the individual concerns. There are at least 5 or 6 issues I can tell you where myself and my community have walked through our neighborhood and had discussions with this individual. Why aren't the other candidates doing this?
Mr. Cheatham, that's a good question. I don't know. And you know what? We're obligated to make sure we ask those candidates that very question. So we're all dealing, the world is dealing with this pandemic. It's devastated the city of Baltimore in the whole about $100 million. Whoever's elected mayor, that person's going to have to deal with the financial reality of that. How is that one person, whoever does become mayor, going to start moving the city of Baltimore forward, having this major deficit, having people out of work, having companies shuttered because of the coronavirus?
I would say first and foremost, what I've seen Thoreau do in this particular case is address what came to me as a community leader. The first 2 things I heard from everybody internationally was the vulnerable and those that are worse off than anyone else. This young guy is addressing the issue. The fact that we're looking at a community that is suffering with food, not having food. We've had elected officials, and I'm saying all of the ones that are in office right now. How did they address the fact that we have 25% of the residents in Baltimore City living in food deserts? You know, right now, day in and day out, folks are scrambling to find food. How can we look at something, this particular virus, and no one is addressing the issue as this young guy has done, I guess the inequality of how it's being addressed? How can you say you need someone to have a doctor's referral?
Right.
To have you checked and you feel you may be dying of the virus, but you don't have a doctor to refer you.
Right.
And I'm saying, golly, gee, this young guy is challenging what my community is saying. I'm a senior citizen. I am diabetic. I have high blood pressure. And you mean to tell me, thank God I have a doctor.
Right.
But what if I didn't have a doctor?
Have one.
You're telling me because I don't have a doctor, I can't get a referral? This young guy is addressing this. Mr. Vignoraja is addressing the inequalities of even what we're doing with this virus.
Mr. Cheatham, I'm going to, first of all, you should know, and I don't know if you could hear it, but our first guest, who you know, Judge Wanda Hurd, talked about those very same healthcare disparities in the black community that you're addressing right now. So we certainly have had that conversation tonight. Our researcher, Julian Barron, has some questions for you if you'll stand by. Julian?
Mr. Cheatham, I want to ask you about the topic of transportation. It's something that we don't talk about very often, and we haven't touched on in these town halls so far. But one of the focal points of Mr. Vignoraja's transportation plan is his commitment to expanding the free bus circulator routes that go across the city to better serve historically disinvested neighborhoods. How do you think a policy like this will serve some of Baltimore's most neglected communities?
Excellently, and to give you an excellent example, one of the problems in dealing with food desert is not as much the issue that you don't have a food market, as much as you have lack of transportation and inaccessibility to public transportation. That's one of the biggest challenges that we have even today. Everybody's giving away free food, but guess what? 25% of those people have no transportation to get to the free food. This young guy, Mr. Vignarajah, is addressing issues that we've had mayor after mayor going all the way back to Kurt Smoke, when they had a failed experiment as to how they were going to investigate the food problem that we have in the community. And it all starts with not just the poorness of the community, but the inability for transportation. This young guy, Mr. Vignarajah, is at least addressing it in a way that would be, I guess, fairer. How can you have the downtown area be the ones that have the free transportation, and you have people, 25% of the residents living in food deserts have no means of transportation? The bus system, I'm in the food desert area. We had 2 bus routes. One used to be the 51 on Bentlow Street. One used to be the number 1 on Fulton. Guess what? You would wait an hour before you would get a bus. The transportation system right now in Baltimore City stinks. It really does. That the people that need the transportation the most are the ones that are not getting it. How do you give free transportation to folks that have the money and they can get the bus? We're saying Mr. Vignarajah is addressing an issue that for 25 years, the Maryland Transportation, Baltimore City Transportation has ignored the transportation problem. Mr. Vignarajah is addressing issues that folks have been in office 20, 25 years have never even thought about addressing. What about the least of these?
Mr. Cheatham, thank you very much for your input on that. Kai, back to you.
All right, Julian, thank you. Marvin Doc Cheatham, thank you as well.